leading up to when we started Love Heals, I started to experience a lot of chronic pain. So I couldn't figure it out, right? I had this beautiful relationship. I had a job that I loved, and I was very stable and getting paid really well for what I was doing. And I felt like I was doing something that mattered, to a degree. I knew there was something still within inside of me that I wasn't able to gift the world with being in corporate America. But the truth is, I thought that's what happiness was a good relationship and a stable job and, good relationships with my family. And so that's what my life was like before. But I realized there was so much more underneath the surface that I was not really connected to. I will say I was living a little bit disassociated, I would say, from my body, really without realizing it. And yeah, so that is what led me up to what you probably witnessed in the beginning as my chronic pain started in 2017, and I could not conquer it in all of the traditional ways. I was suffering, truly.
Can can I ask you, when you got the chronic pain, was it something that you did? Did you injure yourself working out or yeah.
I sure did. Yeah, I was working out, actually, exactly that. So I was on a treadmill and I was running. I was on my cardio day. And of course, because of my personality, right? I'm very diligent. So I do my cardio day and then I do my weights. It's just, I think about it now because I'm so not that person anymore. Um, but that's exactly what I was doing. I was running that day and all of a sudden it pulled like a calf muscle. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so painful. And so I nursed it for a few days thinking it was just gonna bounce back and I was gonna be fine, and it wasn't fine. And then all of a sudden, my other leg started hurting, and before you know it, I'm going to physical therapy, and then they're like, "Well, gosh, this is not helping," and I was getting all kinds of techniques done. I was dry needling and some kind of, like, metal that they were rubbing on my calves. I can't remember what the technique was called. All of it was so painful. I was in tears every time I would go, and eventually they said, "Well, it must be your lower back that's, like, radiating pain into your lower limbs," and I thought, "Okay." So I went to a chiropractor and then started working with them, and, I mean, before you knew it, I don't know how long had gone by and I was not experiencing any relief. In fact, it was just getting worse. I was having more pain and then it was in my sciatica and then my back did start to hurt and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So yeah, I was in a bit of a spiral at that point, all stemming from an injury, but the truth is I think my body had just built up
Mhm.
all of this for so many years, I mean decades, that it was like that injury almost triggered everything to come to the surface.
Dana, was so incredible, especially the
Oh my god.
screaming, which I'd love for you to share a bit.
Okay.
But Brene Brown says there is no courage without vulnerability. Courage requires the willingness to lean into uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Man, you did that. You did that exponentially. And because you did it, it helped us. It helped everybody who watched that movie. And I do you know what I did? After I watched that scene, I got in my car and I drove. It wasn't that I was feeling some particular thing, but I screamed at the top of my lungs because I don't think I've ever done that before. And I'm driving down the highway and I'm screaming, thinking, well, the windows are up. Nobody's going to hear me. They think I'm crazy, whatever. Um, but that released, it just was a huge release. So if you can share that, just bits and pieces of kind of highlights of what you experienced in that documentary.
Thank you. Thank you for your words. Thank you for the acknowledgement
Mm.
of that. And I love Brené Brown's quote, and I truly believe she's so right about that. Something broke so wide open in me when I said yes to sharing that scene with the world. Because the truth is, we were actually filming for something separate with the same organization, but they wanted a video of like a chakra balancing experience. And I was like, "Oh, I've never done anything like that. What is that? I'll go through it." And so my partner was filming, and we weren't sure what it was gonna be. And, of course, finding out how blocked I was in my throat chakra makes a lot of sense because I had been through so much trauma, and I, as the type A perfectionistic people-pleasing personality that I had my whole life, I didn't ever really express anger. I wore the fact that I was never angry and I forgive very easily as like this badge of honor. And I believed that that was such a positive thing for me until I realized that not expressing anger or even acknowledging it or allowing myself to feel it, and certainly not to release it, was such a detriment to me. And so when we were filming for that session, I did not know what was going to come up and how much I was going to feel and process and release from childhood sexual trauma. I mean, that is not something a lot of people talk about and certainly don't share with the world in that way. It was the most vulnerable experience of my life, and I will tell you that because I will say it, I was brave enough to allow that scene, which by the way was so transformational for me. Like I there were so many things that I experienced that were amazing, but something happened in that session, and it taught me that that is actually okay and something I need to do for myself to allow myself to release, allow myself to feel that anger or whatever it is.
Sounds like the old cliche, love yourself. But talk about that a little bit because did you love yourself before? And do you love yourself now?
So I thought I loved myself at some point after doing a lot of inner work, and I realized that I I really didn't. The truth is I was still picking myself apart. I mean, I'm harder on myself than any person could ever be. You know, and a lot of people that suffer with perfectionistic tendencies can probably understand that. And so but no, certainly most of my life, I didn't even consider loving myself. I thought that was unheard of and selfish, and it doesn't make sense to me. You know, I am here to love everybody else in my life, and so I was last. I wouldn't even have considered it. So truthfully, I didn't. And then when I started doing this inner work, I thought I was, but there was so much about myself I still wasn't accepting, and part of that was my body. So even if somebody can't say they love themselves, like how can they show themselves love is what I started to realize. Like today, what do I consider is the most loving things that I can do for me as I would for anyone else? And so as soon as I started to make that shift, it was like, oh, okay, so I can have compassion, even if I can't say or feel like I love myself. Maybe step one is having compassion for myself. And not from a victim standpoint. That was a huge shift for me. And especially with having that injury and surgery, I felt like a victim for so long. Like, oh my gosh, this, surgeon did this to me and I felt like a victim. And so when I shifted that to having compassion for myself, for him, for other people, it was like love started to emerge, if that makes sense. So it kind of started with compassion, and then it moved into what are the loving actions that I can show myself, because what I would do even in my healing journey, I mean, old habits die hard. I had a checklist. Here's all the things that I'm going to do perfectly today to heal. I'm going to do my meditation. I'm going to do some qigong. I'm going to do some tapping. I'm going to do some journaling. I'm going to do like, can you even?
I
I'm
yes, I
putting
can.
so much pressure on myself to heal that it was like keeping my nervous system a wreck. Because if I didn't do it right or I didn't do it that day, I would be hard on myself. I wasn't doing it perfectly. Why am I not healing? Why is everybody else healing? It was a whole thing that I had to learn to just let go. Instead of worrying about all the things I wasn't doing or couldn't do, showing myself love might have been, what if I just rest today?
Yeah.
Actually, what if I don't do all the things that I'm supposed to do to heal today? and I actually just rest and I don't do any of them. And I started to realize, oh my gosh, that is more loving to myself than anything else. So I can't even describe to you in words how important self-love is, but it might not be in the way that people think when they hear those words, you know?